Hi friends, hope you are doing well. I'm Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to talk about a topic requested by one of the viewers, and that is, should you do a master's degree in computer science or one of its close relations such as data science, or should you do an MBA degree? And this is a problem which may confront you once you have finished your bachelor's degree and you are thinking of doing something else. So let's begin this topic. So the number one thing is, let's look at courses. So if we look at the typical courses in a computer science type of curriculum, you need to be good in certain basic courses such as data structures, algorithms, compilers, natural language processing, networking, and to some extent mathematics such as numerical computation and so on, depending on the area you are going to specialize in. Also, you should know enough matrix theory and some level of calculus to work in fields such as machine learning. You need to know discrete mathematics and so on. So essentially, a lot of mathematical training is required, and you will also have to write a lot of computer programs as part of your coursework and project. So if these things interest you, then certainly go for the Master of Science in Computer Science. Now, generally, if you are looking at a Master of Science in Data Science, there will be less of the classical computer science concentration and more focus on aspects such as how to manage data, statistics, to some extent some basic background in math such as matrix theory and so on. A lot of the data science today is actually done using tools such as pandas and Python, and therefore when you work in a company, what is data science is very different from what you do in a university. So a university will try to teach you a lot of the basic aspects of data science in terms of statistics, in terms of machine learning, in terms of data, in terms of mathematics of weeding out bad data and so on. So some signal processing may also be involved here, and essentially all these courses would require you to know mathematics and would require you to be able to write computer programs very well. And so these are some of the basic aspects which you need to look at your background and see if you have a proclivity toward these disciplines. Now let's look at number 2 point, which is if you are going to do an MBA. Now if you are going to do an MBA, you will have a much broader set of courses. So you are not only going to do courses on some aspects of management such as organization theory, marketing, but also on aspects such as finance, accounting, human resources, operations research and so on. So where I find the problem is that many engineers and scientist type people who essentially want to do computer science type of masters, and if they are contemplating the MBA, they should ask themselves whether they would actually like to study accounting and finance. And that is something which is very important, because these are some of the core disciplines, and I find some engineers actually like these disciplines, but some engineers get turned off by these disciplines. So that's something to consider. The second aspect is, in the MBA curriculum you deal with a lot of people management, and sometimes I talk to the professors in these departments and they say that actually the MBA tries to teach you in 2 years what you learn in 10-15 years when working in the real world in terms of how to manage humans. Essentially people management is one of the core skills as far as MBA is concerned. So the question is, if you go to the MBA program without any experience in the corporate sector or in any sector, you may not be able to use all the things which are taught in the MBA curriculum, and that is the reason why many MBA programs require you, or at least encourage you, to have a couple of years of experience in the workplace before you join the program. Because if you are going to study organization theory, if you are going to study the psychology of human behavior as far as organizations are concerned, motivational theory and so on, it's a good idea to have had some experience in the actual world so that you can think each time how you would use these in your real situation. Because many of the case studies which are discussed in these MBA programs, they often come from real world examples, and they may actually ask you to think of a scenario in your own company and figure out how you will use these particular tools which are being taught. So that's something to keep in mind. Now let's look at number 3 point, which are the amount of courses in both these degrees. So if you take a typical MS degree, it will often have 8 to 10 courses, and these courses will be pretty intense courses in the area you are studying, whether it's computer science, data science, or information systems. Now the MBA typically has 20 courses, so you can say it's almost twice that of a typical master's degree. Now some of the masters of science degrees have actually 8 courses or even lesser and a thesis, so that's further down in terms of coursework. So if you compare it with a typical bachelor's degree which has about 40 courses, you can say the master of science degree is something like 1/4 of a bachelor's degree, but the MBA degree is almost half of the bachelor's degree. So certainly the MBA requires a lot of coursework, it requires a lot of extra preparation, it requires a lot of case studies, and it requires a lot of time. So though they may say that the MBA program can be done in 2 years or 2.5 years, actually it is a pretty intense program. Whereas if you are doing a Masters of Science program, you could theoretically do it in 1 year, but most people take 1.5 to 2 years to do, because they have to take a lot of intense coursework, which is often very mathematical if you are doing things like computer science or data science, and also they often have to do a large project or a thesis, which can take a lot of time. Now let's look at the fourth aspect, which is how to get financial aid. Now as far as financial aid is concerned, typically it's much easier to get financial aid if you are doing a Master of Science program in computer science or data science, because here you can apply to all the different type of aid, such as helping some professor in doing their research, you can be a part of research project, you can also help around in teaching, so you can get one of the TAs and so on. Now for MBA it is generally difficult to get funding, but it's also possible to get funding in some cases where you are exceptionally well qualified. Maybe you have very good GMAT scores, you bring some experience to the table which is very unique. So I know some people had very diverse type of experiences, and they had worked in non-profits, or they had worked in some completely different fields such as government service, and when they came for the MBA program, they did get some financial aid, because the university typically wants the cohort to be as diverse as possible. So that is generally something which happens. Now generally most MBAs pay their way through the degree, and at the end of it the expectation is that they are going to make a lot of money in their first job, and so they are going to be easily able to pay the amount required back if they take a loan. So that's something you should do research in, depending on where you are going to be able to get a job, how easy it is to get a job, and so on, and do some calculations using the business knowledge which you have learned. Now the fifth aspect is regarding global mobility and immigration in many cases. So one of the things which happens is that if you are going abroad and doing a master's degree in computer science or data science, typically you will learn a lot of esoteric skills. You may learn machine learning, you may learn cryptography, you may learn data science, and so on. And so it is relatively easier to justify that you are an exceptionally qualified person, you are in one of the STEM disciplines which is very unique, and therefore you should be given the H1 visa or any visa which is required for a foreign person to actually get a job in that country. So in contrast, the MBA is more of a generalist, so it's harder for an MBA person to convince an employer to sponsor him or her for the visa. Now it's not totally impossible, but it may be more difficult. So again, that is something you need to keep in mind, that as far as visa processing is concerned, specialized knowledge is a boon for the immigration lawyers, because they can write up all kind of tales about why the country needs your skills, because you are in some very narrow area. For example, you have used blockchain in cybersecurity, and this is very necessary, and there are only a very few people who can actually do this job. So this can often help the case of migration for people concerned. Now finally, I would tell you an additional point, that is difficult to do, but I see many CEOs have done it, and which is that doing an MS, and after a few years of experience they essentially do the MBA degree. So if you see many of the people who are current CEOs of a lot of tech companies, you will see that they did a bachelor's degree in something to do with technology, they did a master's degree in something to do with technology, and then they worked for a few years and they essentially got the MBA. Now the advantage of this approach is that the MBA degree may actually be sponsored by your company, and there are many companies which give you tuition to do an MBA degree. The other advantage is that you are now very well versed in technology because you have done a Master of Science degree in computer science or data science or any such field, and then you have worked for a few years, so actually you now know all the problems which are there in actual companies in terms of the organization theory, in terms of management, in terms of marketing, in terms of human motivation, and so on, and especially in terms of strategy and tactics. So these are some of the main things nowadays in business, is strategy and tactics. And therefore, if you are able to be patient, if you are sufficiently patient, you can do this option. You can do the MS degree in CS or data science, work for several years in a company, and then start doing the MBA degree from a college or university. Remember that many of these MBA degrees may be offered online, some of them may be in some kind of hybrid program, so you can take advantage of that. So this was my take on the question whether you should do a Master of Science in Computer Science / Data Science, or you should do an MBA. And I hope you benefit from my video. Stay tuned to my channel, and I will see you sometime soon. See you then.